Hello, friends. Welcome to the Australia Today. And this is a very special episode on Bollywood. Not just Bollywood, but its star power, its networking, its global reach. And we have with us a special guest from USA, Dr. Swapnil Rai. She teaches at the University of Michigan and Arbor campus. Swapnil, welcome to the Australia Today.
Thank you, Amit. So glad to be here.
Now, congratulations on your book. I know you're a versatile interdisciplinary scholar. You have published a lot in media studies, critical cultural communication, women's and gender studies, plus industry studies. And when we say industry studies, it's media industry, cinema, TV, OTT platforms kind of thing. Now, one of the things that you have just published is a major book, and you have a copy of it. So if I can request you to show it to our,
Yeah.
now this is a book that you have just published, and the book is titled Networked Bollywood, How Star Power Globalized Hindi Cinema. Now, if we go by the title of your book, you have very diplomatically placed the two things, Bollywood and Hindi cinema. If you don't like Bollywood, then you can go with Hindi cinema. Otherwise, it could have been just, how stars network and, globalized Bollywood or something like that. Is the title diplomatic, or what was going on in your mind?
So the one thing that I predominantly analyze Hindi cinema, the Hindi film industry. The thing with the term Bollywood is because I talk about globalization. So one of the arguments that I make in my book is that in the global space, how the term Bollywood itself has become like a moniker for everything Indian. So in the sense that there was an earlier argument that how it's a Bollywoodization of everything that happened post 2000s. But what I'm saying is that how ever since Bollywood's globalization started, how the term Bollywood got to encompass everything that had to do with the branding of the country, the culture, also the film industry. However, since my analysis is very particular to Hindi film, I felt compelled to put the Hindi in there. But the larger impetus with Bollywood is to say how Indian cinema traveled and globalized outside of
So,
India.
if we talk about Hindi cinema's industrial exchange or globalization, the first things that come to our mind is the star system itself, or how the industry operates, and the songs. So if you go back to Raj Kapoor's song, Mera Juta Hai Japani, Patloon Englishstani, Sar Pe Lal Tupi, Rosi Fir Bhi Dil Hai Hindustani, or you come to Alisha Chinai's song Dekhiye Sari Duniya, Japan se leke Russia. These are in itself an essence of globalization. So Indians, although the term globalization started popularized in 1990s, we are not untouched by globalization. India as itself as a civilization has been globalized from the very beginning. Like, we have been reaching out, not conquering outside, but at least reaching out, doing trade. Do you see which is the point where you put the earliest globalization within the Bollywood kind of industry
Yeah,
spectrum?
that's an excellent question, Amit. Actually, looking at how academic scholarship and broadly general scholarship, how it's viewed, Bollywood and its globalization, like 2000s becomes the inflection point, sort of when the industry gets formal recognition as an official industry from the state, and then now eligible for bank loans and other things. And this whole discourse about corporate Bollywood, global Bollywood starts, right? And then Slumdog Millionaire comes along, and Bollywood broadly as a cultural form and Indian film industry itself very consciously starts to globalize after it's corporatized within quotes. But I make the same argument, the same point that you have referred to, which people do not really think about, is that Bollywood, since its inception, has been very global. Like the first Iranian film was made in India. So
mm,
since the beginning, um,
mm,
the roots of Bollywood have been very global. So this is the story I tell. Like during the British period, and this is something that other scholars like Priya Kumar, who've looked at the
mm,
pre-independence history under British rule, have talked about a little bit. But I kind of use their scholarship to make the broader argument that
mm,
even through things like Devika Rani's Bombay Talkies that collaborated with Germany, and the kind of infrastructure that existed because of British rule
mm,
made Indian cinema global. But even post independence,
mm,
with the way that the industry evolved, after the studios broke down, the stars became very prominent actors.
mm,
And the breakdown of the studios was because of two factors. One was because there was a lot of black money being pumped into the market by independent producers,
mm,
and star salaries became the big point of contention. And suddenly
mm,
you had these stars that were being paid a lot of money. And post independence, they were the ones that then turned to production. So you have Raj Kapoor with RK Films, Devanand's Navketan Films, and these became like a kind of family and friends production cluster helped by stars. But they had global ambitions, and that's the story that I tell, that the stars, due to their personal global ambitions, kind of created pathways, created the networks to take their films global, and in turn showed a
mm,
way for other companies, other productions to follow
mm.
suit.
So, if we talk about just one star at that point of time, Raj Kapoor
Mhm.
stood out because he was really popular, not just in India, but outside India and in one particular country, that time USSR. So, what was that all about? What was the charm, if you have to sum it up, what was the charm of Raj Kapoor outside India?
So it was, well, his charm lay in his affect, the way that he looked. He had blue
Mm,
eyes. He also had a certain kind of persona. So in my book, I theorize like every star has a certain kind of affective power. Raj Kapoor's affective power came from his very Chaplin-esque
mm,
persona and kind of a socialist ideology. Like he was very much rooted and part of the Indian People's Theatre Association, the IPTA movement, and the kind of family film cluster that he built involved K. Abbas, that created stories, a certain kind of narrative that fit their socialist ideological vision, that resonated with the Soviet audiences, in addition to Raj Kapoor's entire persona. Right, he
mm.
was, blue-eyed. There's a lot of kind of racial
Yes.
proximity in the way that the Soviets saw him.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there was a lot of that. But the other part of my story, in fact, a very key part, is how these stars used that affective power and the way that they were networked within
Mm,
political realms, within the social cultural realms. They used it to
mm,
create like opportunities, industrial opportunities. The fact that Raj Kapoor was the only star and his
mm,
family remained the only family that could consistently co-produce with the Soviets.
mm,
Yeah, one interesting bit, I'll just throw it out here, is that I found in my archival research that once the Kapoors had done it, and the
mm,
Soviets were open to having
mm,
to doing these kind of collaborations, there were several filmmakers that wrote letters to the Soviets, like including people like Utpal Dutt, that said, "Oh,
mm.
we want to collaborate with you. We have this idea for." All of them were turned down. So many of them, like they rarely did those collaborations, but it came really easy for Raj Kapoor, and that's
Mm,
kind of my argument, because he had that kind of affective power in
mm.
addition to a very kind of direct network power, because of the way that his family was friends with Nehru, because as we
Yeah.
know, Prithviraj was very good friends with
Mm.
Nehru.
You talked about Nehru, then we come to another star who was friends with Nehru's great grandson. great grandson. Rajiv Gandhi's Pakka friend Amitabh Bachchan. At some point of time, it may be controversial, but he is star of the Millennium, according to BBC. He is king of kings, and as you have rightly pointed out, Omar Sharif, the famous Hollywood Egyptian actor, who said, "This Amitabh Bachchan seems to be more popular than me in Egypt." Right, so it's not just Soviet; it's also the Middle East that has been taken over by actors, and these actors are Hindu actors. Remember, these are Amitabh Bachchan, Devanand, even Raj Kapoor. Even if you have Yusuf Khan, who goes by Dilip Kumar at some, as
For
such.
most of its life, yeah.
Yes, so you have a whole, the from industry structural system, you have the family system coming in, and then you have a guy who says he's not related to the filmy family, but we now know that the father is a famous lyricist. He's also a poet. There are some connections with the film kind of background, but Amitabh Bachchan became superstar. What was going on at that point of time that people accepted Amitabh Bachchan as a superstar and they started getting rid of the family clusters?
Yeah, I mean, Amitabh Bachchan comes at an interesting like transition phase. So we talk about, like in my book, I talk about this kind of network power, that having that kind of class, caste, religion, as you pointed out, and being part of these elite networks, right? He was very close to India's first family. And so as it's popular, like common lore, we know that Indira
Mm,
Gandhi wrote the first letter to her friend Nargis introducing Bachchan to Bollywood, and it is through that network that he
mm,
got his first film role, right? And so that association, the interesting thing about Bachchan's star persona is that even though he was exceptionally elite in every
mm,
sense of the word and was known for like not giving interviews to journalists
mm,
at one point, but all his roles on screen, like he plays the coolie, like he plays very much like the everyday common, the everyman, the plebeian that people could relate to. He becomes the angry young man,
mm,
and in his the development of his star persona, we actually can be mapped out to how the Indian industry and economy was changing. So he was angry young man through the emergency years, and then it changes. He changes to being the bourgeois patriarch. Like soon as we hit the 2000s, like he's the patriarch of Mohabbatein, and so on. And so his appeal, like he's just he definitely had the affect that made him popular. A lot of his roles, especially as Bollywood was at that time, he in the 70s and 80s, it was on screen a lot more secular
mm,
than it is today, probably, especially
mm,
in terms of like narratives like Amar Akbar Anthony and so on and so forth. So uh, Amitabh Bachchan really embodied the moment in that way, and it was so closely
mm,
connected with the political elite, social elite, that he could do certain things. And then,
mm,
more importantly, because he was so elite, is the reason why he was the first one to start his one-man corporation, as he called it. ABCL was the first to organize Miss World in India, which was a big move for which he got a lot of flack. And after all
yeah,
these years, that Miss World is coming back to India now in
mm.
March. So yeah, so it's all that. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'll come to Miss World, but
Mhm.
before I go to Miss World, let's talk about Mr. World, Shah Rukh Khan.
Mhm.
Right? That's so from I'll take a jump because in between Amitabh Bachchan and SRK stardom, you have a lot of heroes who came and went, and now
Mhm.
they have come back as character artist or Big Brother, police officer kind of thing. These were one film wonder kind of stars. We remember them for their songs, and all these things were going on.
Mhm.
But corporate networks were a big thing. Fox Studios, 21st Century Fox. You had Miramax, and then you had the locals like the Reliance and others investing. UTV Motion Pictures became really big. They were investing in Hollywood. They're bringing Hollywood star. Mira
Mhm.
Nair's Monsoon Wedding becomes a big crossover movie. So you have a lot of things going on within the kind of the lihaf of Bollywood, if I can call it. Under the quilt or the bigger chadar of Bollywood, you have all these things are playing out, which are, English movies
Mhm.
and all those kind of things. But they're still kind of Bollywood. No, we are not Bollywood. We are still Bollywood kind of thing. But then global Bollywood enters the new millennium, according to your book, and we have the superstar Shah Rukh Khan.
Mhm.
So, do you think Shah Rukh Khan stands out as a star of the new millennium, or Raj Kapoor, Devanand, Dilip Kumar, Amitabh Bachchan, Shami Kapoor, and other actors, or Rajesh Khanna, have a role to play in making him the star of the millennium? It is because of these guys' hard work or the foundation they laid, Shah Rukh Khan became Shah Rukh Khan.
Well, it was definitely like the Star Foundation also, but the story that I tell is that how, because no power can exist in a vacuum, like power is always relational. So my book is very layered in that sense. It tells a parallel story of how the star power manifested when it was small family led production clusters in the days of Raj Kapoor and Devanand. How could they mobilize? What could they accomplish? Because the structure itself and the way the Indian state was giving very little benefits or
Mm,
not really caring for the mainstream industry, these people had to forge their own way. And how much
mm,
power, what could they accomplish? Like, despite having what I call in my book switching power, like, what kind of switches could they be to eliminate new pathways for Bollywood's globalization, given the constraints of the structure at that time,
mm,
right? With Shah Rukh Khan, the exceptional success has to do with the structure itself has changed.
mm,
So Shah Rukh Khan gets voted into filmdom from television, right? He's a
mm,
TV star, but at that moment when that happens, like TV is globalizing very fast, but
mm,
film industry still hasn't been recognized as an industry.
mm,
Film and
mm,
TV come together in ways that they want to be closer
mm,
to television so that they could reap the benefits of globalization too. And suddenly,
mm,
as you said, like all of these other stakeholders, like everybody, once the market has opened up economically, everybody wants a piece of the India pie. So all of these entertainment companies are coming. And so suddenly the structure itself
mm,
has changed, the field itself has changed. So the kind of visibility that Shah Rukh Khan could create
mm,
for his movie Ashoka or Aamir Khan could create for Lagan, those kind of networks didn't exist for Raj Kapoor. Like he lost so much money on Mera Naam Joker, despite the fact that the Soviets collaborated with him. The Indian states governing bodies hampered his success, like
mm,
almost went bankrupt. The only place
mm,
he made real money was the Soviet Union. But even that couldn't cover the cost. So the point is that the structure itself, as I tell the story of star power and how it globalized and how these stars tried, is also a
mm,
story of how the industry itself evolved structurally.
mm.
And so Shah Rukh Khan and Aamir Khan, like they come into the industry at an interesting moment of transition where they could accomplish much more.
Now, Raj Kapoor was the cultural ambassador for the socialist era, while Shah Rukh Khan became the cultural ambassador for the neoliberalization that was happening. And a major role was played by the global diaspora. Like in Raj Kapoor's case, there was no diaspora as such, but there were people of Indian origin who must have introduced Raj Kapoor to their Egyptian friends or the Middle Eastern friends, German and the Russian friends. With Shah Rukh Khan, it's the millions of people who are living outside, who are hungry for the consumption of Bollywood movies. You just don't want the fake DVDs anymore or the pirated ones. You want the real stuff. You want the stars to come there, stars to perform there. uh, and we'll go back to Miss World again, where you have the global beauty queens, and the female stars taking over, right? So it's not Shah Rukh Khan doesn't become the star of for Hollywood, although he was offered. I think that's the kind of anecdote that he was offered one of the roles of a sidekick villain in James Bond movies, and he said, "मैं villain थोड़ा ना sidekick बनूंगा," right? Kind of thing. I think it was Tomorrow Never Dies or with P.S. Brosnan basically, and they said we are looking because they don't have that kind of structure. Anyone can play any kind of role, even if it's 5 minutes, kind of thing. But it's uh, with Aishwarya Rai, Shushmita Sen, Priyanka Chopra that you actually see Bollywood star power. But that's the female star power, right? So Time magazine lists Aishwarya Rai, the Miss World, as the most, not just beautiful, but most influential people. Then you talk about how Rai, transcendence, like she just goes beyond the beauty. She becomes Bollywood's first ever crossover star. So, what was going on in the female star power that you have observed in your book?
Yeah, so that's also another very interesting story that is not only tied to the globalization itself, but how that power is gendered in some ways. So in my book, like I start with how Miss India was perceived in relation to Bollywood, let's say in the 50s,
Hmm.
where there was this event that I talk about in my book, where Frank Capra and others were invited. Like there was a Hollywood delegation visiting, and Miss India was asked to fill in for because no good Bollywood heroine could be found at that time. So it was that kind of subservient tier three kind of assessment of who Miss India was, despite the fact that, we had people like Nutan who were beauty queens or had participated in pageants and they showed up. Like even up to the point that we get to like Zinat Aman and Persis Kambata, persist, they become global in some
Hmm.
ways. But like I said, this is a parallel story. It's a story where the structure is important, where how the state perceives Bollywood, and in this case beauty queens, how that itself changes, right? So when it comes to the 2000s, the late 90s, suddenly like beauty pageants have a lot of cachet. Like these beauty queens are thought of at the time when they win the contest. And I say that Amitabh Bachchan paved the way for it because he organized Miss World, and then it was followed by these other women like winning beauty pageants. And suddenly, like because of that, like the cosmetic industry, the whole world wanted to be in India. Like it was a big market, they wanted to invest. So and suddenly you have these two women, Sushmita Sen, Aishwarya Rai, go win these major pageants, and when they come home, like they are welcomed um, in a way that was not a precedent for any kind of pageant winner before them, right? And so the whole beauty pageant and that notion gets tied to the national identity and nation branding in a way that the state itself
Hmm.
wants to project its global power, its cultural power through these pageant winners. So when
Hmm.
Aishwarya Rai comes back, she gets to meet with Sonia Gandhi and PV Narasimha Rao and tells him, oh, Nelson Mandela sent this message. So suddenly they are in a whole other class. But
Hmm.
also because their power is feminized in certain ways, like they have that cachet, but they do not have the kind of standalone industrial cloud that a Shah Rukh Khan
Hmm.
had, or that a Bachchan had, right?
Hmm.
And I also say that it wasn't for lack of trying.
Hmm.
But yeah, but as we move forward, as we get to Chopra, again, things change structurally.
Hmm.
And we get Hollywood into the mix and a lot of focus on diversity and inclusion. And she comes at a moment where she can exert that kind of power more so in Hollywood than in Bollywood. So yeah, so
So,
that's the story I tell. Yeah.
so now we move from, in your book, we move from the star system, the family clusters, the kings, the new millennium, finally to the new age of OTT, over the top platforms. And there is a new kind of, you see streaming platforms are helping both the state industry alliance, and they're creating new star power
Mhm.
basically. I watch a lot of YouTube channels, and they have their own stars, like the TVF stars, or you have the Amazon stars. You have the earlier who would be called junior artist or character artist or supporting artist, now they are the stars of OTT platforms. It's not Shah Rukh Khan, it's Pankaj Tripathi who rules, or Rajpal Yadav, these kind of. So, do you see the same thing, or what's your assessment of the OTT platforms and the star power?
Yeah, so in my book, like that's sort of the concluding section of the book where I talk about these streaming platforms as big disruptors. So
Mm,
they're coming into the mix, has been interesting in the case of India, because already the established
mm,
star-led production companies are so powerful that
mm,
they definitely, even for the OTT platforms like Netflix, they are definitely the tier one,
mm,
because all of Shah Rukh Khan's '90s films. The first thing that Netflix did when it entered the U.S. India market was meet with Shah Rukh Khan and Aamir Khan, and it did deals with both of them, and
mm.
acquired like all of Shah Rukh Khan's library of films, like including flops like Chahat and you know those
Ram Jane.
Ram Jane, and it was on Netflix.
Yeah.
So how I see it, or how I theorized it, is that there is this top rung
Mm,
where where key actors, directors that own major production companies, whether it's Karan Johar's production company or Shah Rukh Khan's Red Chilies, they have power even within this kind of um, platform structure where they can push. Like Karan Johar released his film Drive on Netflix because he thought it wouldn't work. So they have that kind of power or sway over the streaming platforms just because they dominate the market in that way. But certainly for the new rung of stars, the industry structure itself is so complex that
mm,
I argue that they cannot have that kind of standalone switching power that this past generation of stars had, because the structure itself has changed and that power cannot be exerted in the same
mm,
way. And at the same time, I kind of end with a provocation that Netflix and others, being disruptors, they have
mm,
actually disrupted conglomerate power in Hollywood itself.
mm,
That it is kind of a Bollywoodization of Hollywood, where you have stars like Brad Pitt, like Reese Witherspoon, like all the others have major production companies that and have some sort of say, create Oscar-winning content, which
mm.
wasn't that easily possible in conglomerate Hollywood that was very top down.
So, so just to conclude, where do you see the future of Bollywood, Hindi cinema, or in a term, because in India we are moving towards pan-Indian cinema at this stage very
Mhm.
fast. So at some point where you had stars like Kamal Hassan, Rajnikant, Mammootty, Mohanlal, and I can go on and on with stars who tried their luck in Bollywood films but couldn't do it because of their Hindi or Urdu Hindi kind of lack of Urdu Hindi skills. But now you have the other way around, where you have the north, west, east India looking towards the south and saying, "Hey, we want another Pushpa, we want another Bahubali,
Mhm.
KGF, and Salar is the latest one. That's basically it left donkey. Uh, so do you think we are moving towards more pan India or maybe a South Asian, Southeast Asian kind of globalized Bollywood cinema? Because I'm watching a lot of movies on Amazon and Netflix, which are Indonesian, Cambodian, Filipino movies. They have some touch of Bollywood kind of, because we know that Shah Rukh Khan, Amir Khan are very popular in these parts as well. And Bollywood is popular. Do you think we are moving towards a pan South Asian, Southeast Asian kind of cinema?
Well, so definitely pan India cinema is very positive for the Indian film industry, because India is a huge market, and to divide it up territorially in the way that it was divided up before doesn't make sense anymore, right? And so this I see as certainly a very positive development, and definitely there is room for the kind of pan South Asia market. I mean, if Netflix can strategize around taking, you know, a Bollywood kind of focus, and knowing that Bollywood is popular in Nigeria, and mixing both to create a film called Namaste Wahala, where they
Mm.
are actually blending elements of both and hoping it would work for Bollywood and Nigeria. And Nigerian diaspora, then why not Bollywood? I mean, this is the way to think about it. So yeah, thank you for for giving that insight. I think the filmmakers should listen to us, because yeah, that's the way to expand. I also kind of end with the fact that Bollywood has gotten so networked in that it's very scalar, it's connected with all of these different nodes at different levels. And for that reason, it's so easy now for Indian stars to like, find a agent in the West to do
Mm.
that kind of crossover. With Aishwarya Rai could only do because she had that kind of racial
Mm.
malleability, like she could literally be from anywhere, so she
Mm.
wasn't being the Indian cast in the movie, and she was so exceptionally superlatively beautiful that she was being cast in every role, right? And they wanted to do that, so that this kind of capital that she had, the aesthetic capital, helped her, and she kind of paved the way for that kind of movement, and that now that the industry structure has changed, a lot of people are leveraging it. So you have everyone from Alia Bhatt to Ali Fazal to whoever, you name it, they're all getting roles in
Yeah.
Hollywood, and it's easy to do that.
Yeah, I was reading something on the Facebook, and this someone said it's time for an Indian Bond, and under it, underneath the photograph was of Hrithik Roshan. They said, "Why not? It's time for an Indian Bond, and this guy can be an Indian Bond." And most of the comments were from people who live in US, UK, the so-called white crowd, where they need the acceptance, and they said, "Hey, we would love to watch this guy because I've seen him dance. I've seen a dancing Bond would be a good idea." So there is this kind of movement where they say, hey, no more taxi drivers, 7-Eleven shop owners, restaurant waiters, or interpreter kind of, social worker kind of roles. We need major roles, and you see that movement is happening all over. Even in Australia, you have kind of people who want to tell their stories their way, right? So the platform is obviously Hollywood or the Australian financial systems, but the stories of people who live here, who work here, that kind of way. So Swapnil, with this, I'd like to thank you. Thank you for sharing your precious time and insights with the Australia Today team. I do hope that our viewers would have some questions and they can post it, and we'll like to once again invite you to talk more about your work, and especially the star power through globalized platforms. When the diaspora goes on to see the stars during special occasions, either it's their show, and that would be a good point to share and talk about how stars interact with the diaspora when they come to meet them. But with this, I congratulate again on your new book, and I do hope we'll share the link of the book so that people can buy it or read it. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Amit. Thanks for having me.